The University of Otago campus will be smoke-free next year, and the institution is trying to help staff and students kick their habits in anticipation. The initiative's been in the news recently, and co-chairwoman of the university's smoke-free campus implementation working group is here with the background. Good evening, Professor Janet Hoek.
Kia ora.
Now, tell us exactly what a smoke-free campus is.
Well, as its name suggests, it's a campus, an area that's defined on a map that we have on our website in which smoking will no longer be allowed.
Now, how did this idea come about?
Well, I think the idea's been a long time in the making. Certainly before I arrived at the University of Otago in 2009, people were thinking about making it increasingly smoke-free. So in that year, a protective perimeter came in around the buildings that ensured smoking didn't occur within 6 metres of a building. So really it's a logical transition now to move from that measure through to a completely smoke-free campus.
And how long before the rule comes into force?
It'll come in on the 1st of January next year.
Now, you're trying to help people quit smoking before the rule comes in. How are you going about that?
Well, I think the university's doing two things to create opportunities for people who decide that this is the time at which they might want to quit smoking. So the first thing it's doing is training staff who would like to become quit advisors to make sure that they have the knowledge and background to be able to give advice to people who decide that they'd like to make a quit attempt, and they can also issue what are called NRT, nicotine replacement therapy cards. Now, people who smoke can take those cards to a pharmacist and redeem them for gum or lozenges or patches. Now, when they do that, they have to pay a $5 dispensing fee. So the second thing that the university is doing is saying that they will reimburse that dispensing fee for up to 3 attempts each year for the first 2 years of the policy. So I think this is really quite unparalleled support from any tertiary institution in New Zealand.
Do you have any figures on how many students smoke?
Yes, some colleagues in the Department of Preventive and Social Medicine did a survey in 2011 of both staff and students. So we know that around 5% of staff are either daily or occasional smokers, and about 8.5% of students. So we're actually talking about quite a small group within the entire campus population.
Have there been many people taking up the offer of the patches and what have you?
Well, we get reports back. The uptake has been reasonably slow, but that's only to be expected at the moment, I think, simply because people tend to defer quitting until the pressure comes on. So we're anticipating that uptake of the offer will increase towards the end of this year, and also obviously next year once the policy is in effect.
How do you think students perceive smoking nowadays?
I think smoking has lost all the glamour and cachet that it once had. We know that young people often take up smoking because it's a way of asserting themselves and their identity, of showing that they've got control against prevailing social norms, and yet the irony is that for young people the very first thing that they lose is that sense of control when they become addicted. So that we know that they dislike that very much. They're very, very self-conscious about the unpleasant smell of smoking, and they're also acutely aware that smoking has a very negative social stereotype. So I've talked to a lot of young adult smokers. They're becoming increasingly covert in how and where they smoke, simply because they're worried about the judgment that others might pass on them.
How important is it, do you think, to have a smoke-free campus?
Well, I think it's really important for the University of Otago. Probably, let me count the ways. I think, first of all, the University of Otago has always really prided itself on having a very special campus environment. So I think it's certainly one of the most beautiful campuses in New Zealand. And smoking is inconsistent with that impression and overall desire to enhance our campus environment. I think, secondly, the University of Otago has always been a research-led institution, so we've got a division of health sciences that's second to none in New Zealand, where we've got some leading tobacco control researchers. They've been looking at smoke-free places, pointing at the benefits that accrue from implementing policies like that. So it's really quite inconsistent for us not to follow our own research findings. And of course, finally, the government is putting in place a goal of having a smoke-free Aotearoa New Zealand by 2025. So I think as an institution that's got a strong sense of social responsibility, it's incumbent on us to think about how we can contribute to and make sure we realise that ambition.
From the University of Otago, Professor Janet Hoek, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.